Good afternoon and welcome to Senator Wendy DeBoer, legislative candidate from District 10. Thank you, Senator DeBoer, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meetings. My name is Gina Ragland, and joining me today are AARP lead advocacy volunteers, Susan DeCamp, Joyce Beck, Tim Potter, and Mike Barwig. As mentioned before, Dave Holmquist, our state president and one of your constituents, was planning to join today but was unable, and he does send his regrets for that. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. Senator DeBoer, we appreciate your taking the next 30 minutes of your time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50+ voter and their families in your district and across Nebraska. As a little bit of background, AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to empowering and strengthening people 50 and older to choose how they live as they age. As people live longer, healthier lives, we know we need to think differently about what it means to age. So with that, Senator DeBoer, I'm going to give you a chance to start off by giving us a little background about yourself and your campaign. Around 5 minutes or less on that would be great. And then once we've completed that, we'll jump into the questions. So I'll pass it back to you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Wendy DeBoer, and as Gina said, I represent District 10. I have been doing so for 4 years. It's kind of a really great thing for me to represent District 10 because I grew up in that district. We moved there when I was 2 years old, and I lived there until I went away to college, and my parents didn't move away until I was a senior in college. So it's my home district, and it's really great to be able to represent the people of District 10. There were some changes with the redistricting, but it still has my childhood home in it. So very pleased about that. Still has that area. So in 2018, I was elected. I took office in 2019, and I have served on both the Judiciary and the Transportation and Telecommunications committees since that time. And I also serve on the Planning Committee, and I was elected Vice Chair of the Rules Committee this last 2-year biennium. So those are kind of the committees that I serve on, and I am excited to be running for re-election this cycle, and I'm excited to get to go and talk to all my constituents, as I have been doing I started last summer right after redistricting, going to some of the newer areas in my district and talking to folks and hearing about what's important to them. And so that's something that I really value. And the other day it occurred to me that there's less than 50 days left. And if you've never done this kind of campaign work where you knock on doors, it's interesting because there's no other time when you can go to people's doorsteps and say, hi, my name is Wendy, I'm a complete stranger to you, and I would like you to tell me what's most important to you. And they tell you what's most important to you. So it's a really great time to get to know what matters to people. And I was thinking 50 days, and I may never have that opportunity again. So I'm really glad to be talking to folks, and the campaign is going well as I talk to folks, and I'm pleased about that.
Perfect. Thank you, Senator DeBoer, and thank you for the last years of your service and your leadership in many ways in the legislature. We do appreciate that. We'll move into the questions now. We have provided to you ahead of time a set of 3 issues containing 4 questions that pertain to the 50+ in Nebraska. And again, due to the time allotments, about 5 minutes for each is what we're figuring for that. So our first question is on health, caregiving, and home and community-based services. And Susan DeCamp will take that. So go ahead, Susan.
Good afternoon, Senator DeBoer. It's nice to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Home and community-based services, as you well know, which is also known as HCBS, provides an array of services to help people with their daily living activities that promote independence and allows them to age in place in their own homes and communities and delays institutional care. Family caregivers also provide care for someone who's not able to live independently. These family caregivers are family members, friends, or acquaintances who often provide this care without any pay. And serving on the Communications and Transportation Committee, I know you're well aware of the fact that telehealth services can be vitally important, particularly to seniors, particularly also in the areas, the rural areas and the underserved communities. And they can also provide support to family caregivers by reducing their travel, wait times, and costs associated with caregiving. So we have a couple of questions on that topic for you. The first one, what will you do to support the 240,000 unpaid family caregivers in Nebraska through policies such as enhanced respite services, access to telehealth, caregiver education and training, and help with out-of-pocket expenses? And the second question, what will you do to protect and or expand the home and community-based services program, particularly in the area of recruitment and retention of a sufficient workforce, and also adequate funding of these services that are provided?
So those are some big questions. One of the things that I can most directly affect if I am back on the Transportation and Telecommunications Committee, which would be in my intention if I got reelected, would be to make sure that it's even available, because some parts of our states do not have the kind of broadband that would be necessary to even have that available, and to have the kind of reliable broadband services that would be possible to make telehealth an even bigger part of our total healthcare package for those folks. So we've done a number of things recently to try to speed up broadband deployment and to make sure that it is high quality broadband deployment. We are in Nebraska doing something called the Broadband Bridge project or bill that helps to get the sort of needed support to get broadband deployed, which means that we help companies to build out that kind of typically fiber. There would be some possible cable exceptions to that, but typically fiber optics to the individual areas that people live in. That's something that I think that we need to continue with. It's something that I supported at the time, and it's something I continue to support because we need to get that access available. There's a lot of work there. It's not going to be done overnight. We have to, support this program for a while to get it to everyone. But then arguably broadband is future proof. And so that will help folks for a long time to come. So it's an investment now, just like getting rural electricity was an investment, but we hope that it will provide these services to folks so that they can do things like telehealth for a long time to come. I think you have some other questions about workforce retention.
Right, how to recruit the workforce and retention, particularly in these areas, the nursing and those types of professions.
Yeah, I mean, first I will say I wish I had a magic wand that would make it easier for us, but I'm realistic about the fact that I don't. So this is a big problem that we can't solve overnight, and we need to keep working on. And some of that is just making sure that we have educational opportunities for our young people to get into these fields, that they know about these fields, that they have internship programs available, that there are folks talking to them in, when they're juniors in high school, even about, getting into some of these types of programs, so that they can become interested at an earlier age in some of these different types of things. So that's a more specific answer. The more general answer is we've got to attract and retain our 18 to 35-year-olds. I mean, our young people in this state, we have to make sure that they're there. What do I do to do that? That's anything from making sure that we have adequate housing to making sure that we have broadband access everywhere so that folks can live in small towns if they want to. And if they have a spouse that has a job that's not available in that small town, that they can telecommute, which is something that after the pandemic, we see there's more people doing. So just providing opportunities for people throughout the state is really important. And then, continuing to grow our economy as a general premise. These are sort of vague answers, but it's a big, big issue. And workforce development is a huge thing. One of the things that I specifically did with it was I helped with our childcare subsidy expansion. The eligibility for childcare subsidy was really much smaller than all the states around us, so that you could work in another state, live in another state, and be eligible for this federal program that's state administered, and you could get help with your childcare. And you couldn't in Nebraska. Well, we are now much more, until it sunsets, we're much more like other states around us in terms of eligibility. So that helps us because we know that during the pandemic, folks stayed home, childcare organizations closed, child providers closed, and then folks needed somewhere for their kids to go that was safe. You can't work if your kids don't go somewhere safe. So that's one of the many things that, you know, it's like a sweater and you can pull on any thread and start trying to work on it there. So one of those things is childcare that I've been working on.
Great, thanks for your answers, Senator. And also thank you for the work that you've done in the state legislature and continue to do.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Susan. Our next question is on nursing facility quality, and Joyce Beck is going to take that. So go ahead, Joyce.
So Senator DeBoer, thank you for giving us some of your time this afternoon. Over 20,000 Nebraskans require care in nursing facilities or assisted living communities. Facilities have closed their doors, citing reimbursement challenges and staffing shortages. Nebraska will need an additional 4,700 more nursing assistants, LPNs, and RNs by 2028 to meet Nebraska's care needs. Everyone, regardless of where they reside, deserve to be treated with dignity and respect and have access to quality medical care. Better staff to resident ratios improve the overall quality of care and the well-being of residents. Workforce recruitment, retention, and job satisfaction challenges are prevalent across long-term care services and support industry. Causes of workforce challenges must be identified and implemented to respond to the growing need of high-quality care. So, Senator DeBoer, here's my question for you. What will you do to improve the quality of nursing facility care for Nebraska residents, including addressing the growing long-term care workforce crisis in the state, professional education and training, and accountable facility reimbursement?
Thank you for your question. Yes. So one of the things that I have been throughout my time in the legislature very concerned about is making sure that we have provider rates where they need to be so that these people who are providing these really needed services, and you know, most people don't get into that job unless they really, really care about it. So, you know, people who are working hard, doing their best, we want to make sure that they're getting the provider rates that they should be getting to keep their doors open. I noticed you sent out some information at one point that 30 of our nursing homes in Nebraska have closed in the last 5 years. And that is, you know, that's a scary thought, really. I mean, we want to keep those facilities open so that people can go to them nearer to their hometowns and nearer to where in town they live and all of those things. So what will I do? Well, workforce, as a general premise, I sort of answered this in the last question as well, that we've got to make sure that younger kids know about these jobs, know how great these jobs are, and they have a real opportunity to learn about them when they're you know, making decisions about what they want to do with their life. And we need to support those institutions and those students who are taking education in that area. And then I think doing things like the child care subsidy, where folks who are just starting out, part of that program is to help folks who are just starting out to be able to afford childcare when they're first starting, so that as they go along into their job and they sort of get more experience and they go up in the ranks and things, they can afford their own. They go off of it. They're able to do whatever, but just as a kind of a starter, because sometimes it's really daunting for people to get started in some of these careers. So that's part of it. Let's see, what else was in that question? Workforce. Sorry, can you remind me some of the others?
Yeah, of course. Long-term care workforce, professional education and training, and accountable facility reimbursement.
Yeah, the facility reimbursement, that's
Mhm.
something that we do in our budget, and I have supported, and I don't think we're there yet. I think we need to keep working on trying to make sure, particularly with inflation, that we're keeping our provider rates where they need to be.
Okay.
So yeah, and then professional development. I actually haven't had a lot of experience with helping folks out with that. Just haven't seen those bills in front of the legislature, but that sounds like something that would be really good to do.
All right. Well, thank you, Senator DeBoer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Our third and final question for discussion today centers around livable communities and helping people stay in their home. And Tim Potter's going to take that. So go ahead, Tim.
Okay, thanks, Gina. And thank you, Senator, for being with us today. A livable community is safe and secure, offers affordable housing and transportation options that allow individuals to travel by multiple means, and provide supportive community features and services for people of all ages, allowing people to remain in their communities as they age. Affordable and reliable health care and transit options are critical to support older Nebraskans aging in place. High-speed internet should be affordable, reliable, and accessible for all Nebraskans. Digital skills development is also essential to obtaining the benefits of high-speed internet access in the home. So my question is, what will you do to ensure all Nebraskans, only those 50 plus, have access to livable communities which offer affordable housing, diverse transportation options, adequate health care, and affordable, reliable, and accessible high-speed internet, including digital skills development?
A great question again. Quite a few pieces of that. So I think the ultimate overarching thing is we need to be looking at our state as a whole and saying, how do we keep all the communities in our state healthy and thriving, and not just one or two, not just rural, not just urban, but all of them. So part of that means that even this urban senator needs to be thinking about what's happening in those rural areas to make sure that there is broadband out there so that folks can maybe telecommute, bring some new folks into those areas. Make sure that we have strong public schools throughout the state. That helps keep those communities thriving. There are a lot of things that we can and we need to do to keep communities throughout the state thriving. So that's just a general sort of overview. And part of that is making sure we have our workforce again, which means we have, a lot of people who are, keeping education strong throughout the state, because that's going to keep our workers, able to be most efficient, is if they're well educated. And so I've fought for, schools across the state that keeps the community strong. That's something. As far as diversity of transportation, I've voted for a number of bills that would do that within the urban areas, but it is a big problem in the rural areas. And I don't know how to make some of those options efficient within rural areas. So that would be something that if someone had a good idea, I would be happy to listen to. But I have not yet come across what would really help with that, to make that one better. Just in general, I think also making sure that our telehealth options are strong in the state helps to keep those communities thriving out there in places where maybe we don't have hospitals as frequently as we do in the more urban parts of the state, or whatever healthcare providers of any sort. Doesn't have to be a hospital. So telehealth, broadband, schools, that's kind of the short answer to that question, I guess.
Okay, well, thank you for your views on that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator DeBoer. And as we now come to the end of our meeting time, I'd like to offer the final minutes back to you for any closing thoughts or comments you might have for our members and the constituents of your district. So I will pass it back to you. If you have any final comments, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I will say that I was happy to work with some of the AARP folks this last year possibly the year before as well, but I can't remember when I introduced the bill on Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. In Nebraska, we know that our population will at some point in not too many years be more people over the age of 65 than under the age of 18. And we know that Alzheimer's and other dementias affect folks who are over 65. And we need to, have a plan in place for how we're going to address that care. And as a state, how we're going to address, what we do with a shortage of healthcare providers for that particular kind of work and all of those sorts of things. So I was very pleased to pass the bill this last year that would update our Alzheimer's plan with an eye to that changing demographic in Nebraska, and wanting to make sure that we have options and we know what we're doing, and we're training people now to handle the kinds of medical needs that people are going to have in the next 5, 10, whatever years. So that was something that I was pleased to work with AARP on, and others certainly on that bill, and pleased to get that in place. And yeah, that's one thing. I'm glad that we last year passed the Social Security tax. We passed the bill to get rid of the tax on Social Security income. I was a co-sponsor of that bill, and I was very pleased when we passed that. So I'm glad that we were able to get that done. So I think we are making some progress for seniors in Nebraska. And that's really important to me. I know there are a lot of seniors in my district who live on a fixed income, and particularly with inflation, they're beginning to be, really concerned about what they're going to do. So I'm glad we've made some small strides. I think there's a lot more to be done to help folks who are living on a fixed income to make sure that they have what they need. And so more work to be done. Glad for the little things that we can accomplish, and we'll keep going and keep trying to do more and more to make it a great place to retire in, a great place to be around your grandchildren, and a great place to live.
Perfect. Thank you, Senator DeBoer. And I do want to publicly acknowledge and thank you, yes, for your work on the Alzheimer's task force, updating that, getting that bill passed. I know it was not looking like it was going to go, and then all of a sudden it was amended into another bill and it went through. So we do appreciate your leadership on that. And most certainly, yes, thank you for your vote on Social Security tax exemption, the removal of that. That will save a lot of people in Nebraska, especially as inflation continues to skyrocket at the levels that it does. So thank you again for taking the time to visit with us. We wish you the best with your campaign, and thank you for meeting with AARP today. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Senator
Thank you.